Welcome to the I Create Daily podcast. I'm Leora Alderson.
And I'm Devani Alderson. We are your co-hosts on this journey of creativity and productivity.
I Create Daily is for artists in every genre of creating, from musicians to writers, crafters to inventors, bloggers to entrepreneurs. I Create Daily is a movement for creators serious about your art.
If you're into creating anything, this podcast is definitely for you. Thank you so much for joining us on this journey.
Welcome to I Create Daily, a movement for creators serious about their art. I'm Leora.
And I'm Devani. And today we're joined by Matt Gallegos. I said that right? Gallegos. And Matt is a photographer, cinematographer, and visual artist. He and his wife, Kourtney, are the Tandem team, working together, making great art for their clients. Welcome, Matt. Yeah. We're so glad that you're joining us.
Welcome.
Well, I appreciate you having me.
So tell us, how did you get started becoming a full-time creator, photographer, videographer, cinematographer? Well,
it's a long process, honestly. Really, it all stemmed from a lot of IT background. So I graduated high school and got a job with a family friend who had a computer shop that led to a job working for Apple, working for Geek Squad. And then basically what happened at that point is I was recognizing how much work I was doing, and you know, at that point in jobs before career happens, I'm thinking how much money I'm making those companies and how little of that I'm seeing. So I was like, you know, I could just do one of these jobs a day and probably support myself on that. And the motivation behind that was there's so many other things I would rather spend my time doing. Yeah. At that time I was actually writing. I have some novels partially written on my hard drive that have never seen the world. But yeah, so really I was just trying to buy time. I was trying to buy more opportunity to make things. So I went out on my own with a IT business, ended up partnering up with that guy who hired me earlier. We ended up being partners and worked in that for a couple of years. And from then, just service industry led to, you know, parallels. First, I would fix a computer, and then, you know, a little bit of technical things lead to graphic design and web design. And then I'm all of a sudden in this creative world where I'm needing to add stock photography to stuff. And then I'm using my phone to take photos, and then I buy a nicer camera, and all of a sudden I'm shooting weddings. So
yeah,
it was stepping stones.
Yeah. And that's such an important story because in particular, young people, like you said, like you were when you graduated high school, or if someone's graduating college, or before entering college, before even deciding about whether to go to college, there's so much pressure to what are you going to do with your life? You know, to what are you going to do? What's your job going to be? What's your career going to be? And of course, we're in the era of the millennial and then Gen Z years, right? And so it's like we don't have to know ahead of time, or I'm not even there. But baby boomers, it's the same thing, because so many baby boomers are retiring from their career, looking and still young enough to look for the next thing. So, you know, it's like you don't have to know in ahead of time. You just have to get going with where you are, with what seems to be the next most logical step, and walk through every open door of opportunity to see where it leads. So it sounds like what you did.
Well, so much of that process is me combating this internal dialogue that I have this entire time of what do I think is smart? What do I think makes sense versus what feels right? And I followed so many things down the path of, I think this makes sense, this is smart, until the point where it didn't stop being a good idea, but I just couldn't continue doing it. It killed me to do things that were smart and wise. So like I went to college because that's what responsible people do. Right. I went for like a semester until I couldn't afford to continue going, both financially and like soul wise. Like it just wasn't for me. And I didn't have a good plan as to how to figure out another option. I just knew that this isn't right. This isn't for me.
Yeah.
And it was just, that was a hard step to take because there wasn't a lot of voices saying that.
Right.
Yeah, that's interesting because a lot of people, like, they'll make a choice, whether it's college or a job or a career or they'll make some decision that's like this life changing decision. And if you come to find out it's wrong, there's like those two voices in your head where you're like, well, I have to justify doing this because, like, I jumped in and now I don't want to seem like a flake or like I'm not committed or whatever. But then there's this other part of you that's like, well, but I really don't want to get stuck, doing something that doesn't really excite me. And I think a lot of creatives sometimes do get stuck in that place of like, what's practical? What do I want to do? What do I love to do? And is what I love to do going to support me?
Yeah, well, when I went to a liberal arts college just near my hometown because I was dating a girl who I'm married to now, and I didn't want to go too far away. So I went to a liberal arts school around here, and I went for elementary education because that's a career that's probably going to be sustainable. It's modest, but will not disappear anytime soon. I really wanted to go for music, but I didn't think that was wise. I thought that was too risky, so I made the safe, intelligent choice. And later realized I was like, no, it's not safe and intelligent if it's unsustainable. And for me as a human, that was unsustainable.
Yeah. Well, and what you're speaking to though is like, so the baby boomer generation, probably your parents are baby boomers, that's what they knew that was true for their time. And so they then taught and teach their children the best thing they know, which is what they were taught, which even, so many of the baby boomers were the rebels, the hippie generation, the ones who rioted and didn't against the establishment. And then yet they became that because those were the only choices. And they didn't have the internet and the opportunity to take their art and their passion directly to their audience. And so, but that is beginning to, that foundation is beginning to crumble. So like we're all for education, very much so, like lifelong learners. It's just that it doesn't always have to be, the mainstream concept.
Formal education.
Exactly.
Well, it's funny because as lame as it sounds, like literally my favorite thing is to learn. Like the entirety of my career, if anything, my like vice is that instead of doing something that I know, I'm way more apt to just learn something that I have no idea about, because that is what I like to do more than anything else. But for me, I had to be a college dropout in order to pursue learning.
Yeah.
Yeah. And learning. And the thing is, like, we're here to learn. Ultimately, we're here to learn and then create things out of what we learn. And that takes so many different paths for so many different people. And if you're somebody who, like, your joy in the world is to create, then it doesn't always make sense to go to school to learn how to make something. It makes sense to make something, which leads to a good segue to what is it that you make? Like, what photos, what videos, what is the bulk of your creative time spent doing?
Well, as I'm a glutton for variety, so I can't do anything for too long before I want to do something else. So I do a lot of photography and video. I work really closely with a creative agency that, does all sorts of stuff. And primarily with them, I do photography and video. For my video, I get the opportunity to do a lot of music production. I play a few instruments and love doing that. I get to do a little bit of graphic design with all of that. I'm making different images, and I get to do some animation within those videos. I do web development because I'm an entrepreneur. I'm a freelancer, so I have to, create my own marketing and all that stuff. So with all the marketing comes all sorts of other things. And then with the business side, I do a lot of content marketing, kind of organically. Like I know that when I just make something, whether it has any real purpose or not, it's just puts you in the front of mind when someone's looking for, like, oh, I need someone to do this thing. They're like, oh yeah, that guy who just put out that thing.
Yeah.
So when you ask me what I do, it'll probably be different in 2 months. I'm always excited about the next thing to do. I'm eyeing the 3D cameras and the 360 cameras and stuff, and just kind of waiting for the price to drop for the quality of them and waiting for more people to jump on board.
Yeah, it's really interesting. We've had a couple creators talk about how that is sort of their job role. Their description in life is I create, and then everything else is just like what I'm doing in the moment. And so right now it might be the 3D videos that I'm super obsessed with, or photos, or, you know, whatever evolution that it takes. It's just I'm creating.
Yeah.
Well, my creating and my learning is the same thing for me, because it's really exploring. That's the way it feels most true to me, is I like to explore, whether it's ideas or art forms. I like to just stumble around and figure out stuff.
Yeah, no, I mean, that's what you just described is essentially, from our observation and our own experience, is essentially the best path of learning. You know, it is learning through discovery, through doing, and even better if you can earn while you're learning. You know, so like Devani, for instance, was homeschooled for most of her schooling, and with a few stints elsewhere doing other things. And she started her own social media services business at age 15 as a part of her homeschooling, learning entrepreneurism. And, you know, how awesome to be able to be learning while earning, rather than coming out with college debt, you know, with student debt kind of thing. And so that's... And
in today's world, no guarantee of how to fix the debt situation, you know? I mean, and that's a whole other conversation. But, you know, it's like there's this huge gap between going to school and trying to figure out your life at an age where it's questionable whether you even know or should be making such a critical decision about your life.
Right. Well, and so many of the things that I spent time learning earlier in my, you know, adulthood, they're obsolete skill sets. And had I went into a bunch of debts to acquire that skill set, I would have regret that a lot. Like I started, you know, I said I got into the IT business. I was doing a lot of like home computer repair, but that looks so different now. And I would be completely skillless if that is the path that I pursued exclusively. But one of the accidental and has then become an intentional thing that I do is diversification. That's so important to me being able to sustain any sort of living, is diversification.
Absolutely. Now, do you have any kind of interest? Do you enjoy sort of teaching or consulting?
I love consulting. One of the things that I understand about myself and people tell me is I am very quick to help. Any opportunity to help, and I'm eager to do that. I don't know where that comes from. Well, like I went into elementary education because I like teaching. I like, you know, I like all that process. So any way I can do that is exciting for me.
So from what you've described, that we've been talking about a lot lately, is that you have a strong inclination to be a generalist, and that is you like to learn and do a lot of different things. And the value in that is, so you may not be the expert on this or the expert in that, you could still have a lot to learn on any one of those things. But by having enough knowledge, then you have a big picture idea of things and the working of the world and the social media and the visual art industry, as well as how it blends with the technical and the marketing. And that is what many small businesses need, and that they're floundering, not just small businesses, but large corporations as well.
Yeah, I always end up being kind of a jack of all trades, and I'm like not the best at anything that I do, like not even close. But in most rooms, I probably am better than most people at like this random skill. Like I tend to be, and that's usually the way I learn things, is I learn to a pragmatic point. Once it becomes like, there's like an exponential point where your income and what you can do with a skill set raises and raises and raises. And then at some point, now you're like competing for the tippy top. And that has like a lot of clout to it. Like if you could be the best at anything, it's insane. But the amount of discipline and time that goes into being the best of anything is just crazy. And I don't have that discipline. Even if I wanted to, I like can't do that.
And it's good to be aware about that, because it might frustrate a lot of creatives, because we do have that, we want it to be perfect. And part of that perfection is a little bit of fear of it's not ready yet. I can't show the world my baby, and I can't have them judge it and ruin it, or whatever, whatever your mental thoughts are with that. And then also some of it is like, what I want to do is put out quality. And sometimes being the best at something or striving towards that, we can feel conflicted, because we want to constantly put out content. We don't want to let the perfection stop us, but maybe we realize we want to do more different things, and we don't want to just be known for being the best. And I think having that awareness to know that, okay, they can be the best at this skill, but I want to know like these 10 other things.
Yeah. Well, and I find that it's also really useful for me and for my clients and my peers that I work with. Having that diverse skill set is I guess that is what I'm best at, really, is I'm really good at having a variety of skills. So when I go into a situation where we're talking about web design, and then all of a sudden we're like, oh, we should put a video here. And like, what kind of format should it be? Like, what would that look like? It's like, I can usually answer those questions too. And it ends up being helpful for me. And especially that's one of the differences between just like creating for art's sake and creating with like a pragmatic goal with like service industry in mind is it matters if it's useful still.
Right.
Yeah.
So with your business, and we were kind of taking this a little off script from the questions we sent to you, which we typically do because we love getting involved in the conversation with people as opposed to just sticking to a rigid script. It sounds like right now your business, Tandem Studios, is that right? Did I see that?
Yes.
I say it right? Okay, good. Tandem Studios, which is a great name, and love the logo and love the fact that you're working together. It sounds though like it could be something that becomes where you are the owner of the agency that has those services and offers those services, rather than always being the implementer and doer yourself. But you're the consultant and you're advising clients what they need, which your agency can provide. Is that where you are hoping to go with that?
In a sense, realistically, no.
Okay.
I want that to be an option. But I know myself, and I know that I'm always going to be in the trenches, and I'm always going to be like, oh, let me try. Like that, if there's anything that's true about me, it's that I always have the mentality of like, oh, I want to try. I want to turn.
Yeah.
So I want to create something where I don't have to be involved. I don't have to be there. But all the projects where I want to be there, then it's conducive to that as well.
Yeah, well, no, that's the best kind of business, one where you have the choice of what it is you do and how much of it you do.
Yeah.
Because there's a lot of people who end up developing a business and outsourcing skills that they don't have. And that's a great way to do it. That's just not my way to do it.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
No, yeah. I mean, it's far better when you also know that thing that you're serving, that you're consulting, you're advising your clients, and then you also know whether that freelancer or employee is doing the best work, based on what you know. So yeah. That's the ideal scenario. So how long have you been working on your own business or in your own business?
Well, so Tandem started a couple different ways. It's actually an interesting thing. I've always been really interested in photography, but I didn't pursue it until 2015, because even at that time, I looked at it and I saw how many people were out there buying cameras, how many people were like, oh, I'm a photographer and doing things. And I was just like, there's just no room to compete. There's no point. I'm just going to end up spinning my wheels and getting nowhere.
And there was also so many, 2015 kind of started that curve of so many people getting into the mobile photography where anybody who had a smartphone could be a photographer.
Yeah. And that's actually what really pushed me to the point is I specifically remember walking around, coincidentally, North Carolina. I was visiting some friends there, and I just got a new phone and I was taking photos with it. And I was just like, really like impressed with the quality of it, and I was like, oh man, this is really. And then I got really into it, and then I went and picked up a $300 camera just to continue playing around with, just for my own purposes, so I could take photos for the things that I'm working on or whatever. And then I couldn't help myself. That's really what happens. Like my drive is not out of discipline; it's out of the lack of discipline. My lack of discipline is what ends up allowing me to create, because I can't not.
Right. Yeah. I can't not create. That's spoken like a true creator. So you said lack of discipline. So one of our questions tends to be, because I create daily, it's about the concept of the daily discipline of creating something. Do you have a daily structure that does work for you, or is it no structure works for you? Do you create something daily?
Well, for a little bit of a frame of reference, my day started, today's Thursday, my day started Wednesday morning, and I was up all night working, because when I say I'm like undisciplined, I'm like that to a ridiculous degree. Tomorrow, I'm going to be in a car, like accompanying a friend to Cincinnati, just on a road trip, just because she's got to drop someone off at an airport. Like I'm the least disciplined person that could possibly like still make a freelance entrepreneurial living. Like I have so little discipline at all. And I know it's all like all the things that the books tell you to do. And I've read enough and I've seen enough good advice that I still don't really abide by. But my strategy is different. Instead of doing, because that's I guess the thing. Instead of doing what I think is wise and what I think is smart, I try really hard to do what feels right, which that's got to be such an individual thing from person to person, because like I said, I can't help but make something.
Right.
Like so some days I wake up and I can't help but make something. So I go and make something and I finish it. I will make until I'm done completing that project. And then some days I wake up and I'm like, I don't feel like doing a thing. And I don't really push myself. I kind of embrace the waxing and waning, and I just embrace the ever-changing nature of it.
Yeah. Well, I mean, that makes sense from the standpoint of the difference, I think, for you is that you're an ongoing learner. So you're an avid learner and you're an avid doer because you love the doing. And so really then if that works for, like you said, working until middle of the night or up all night, that's somebody who thrives on working, thrives on learning, and therefore it doesn't matter exactly when that occurs or whether it occurs on a disciplined, structured format. What you're describing since the beginning, I guess, of our conversation, also, you're talking about listening to the wise voice versus what feels right. You're battling the indoctrination of society and what you've been trained as the way, including from some of the best books. And this is what, we've had a lot of conversations along those lines, and they're all good and helpful, but it's just that any one, like you could pick up two different books from a highly successful person, and they could be almost the opposite advice. One we talked about recently was Brian Tracy has a thing about eat the frog in the morning, first thing in the morning. It's like, whatever's the hardest thing in the morning, do that. And then the rest of your day is awesome. Conversely, there are those who advise start with the little things and knock off a bunch of little wins, and that will energize you. They're completely opposite. And so it depends, right, on the person.
Yeah.
Right. Well, and that's one of the things that I think is most important is I think the reason I'm able to use my method well is because it's very, very truly good for me.
Yes.
So I think the most important thing is understanding yourself and your habits and your nature really well.
Yeah.
Because if you're someone who will become discouraged because you struggled with that thing first thing of the day, then you probably need to take that easy task, just accomplish a thing and kick its ass, and then you're going to be good. Yeah. But if you're someone who really needs a big win to have like a good morning, then you should probably bite off that big thing. Or if you're going to like procrastinate it forever, and I'm not much of a procrastinator. So my way is very me. Mm-hmm. So I don't necessarily like advise it to people. It just depends on who you are.
Yeah, absolutely. No, that's perfect wisdom. So yeah, I'm so glad you brought that up, because it really is. It depends on the person. If something's not working for you and you know that you're making progress, I mean, that's the other critical thing. You're making progress in your business. You're making progress in your learning and your education.
And your life goals around your business. And,
And you're feeling happier, doing it.
And I think too, like sometimes, before you figure out sort of who are you and what are you doing, and are you working your creative talent in the way that works for who you are as a person and who you want to become. I think a lot of times with both creators and entrepreneurs and the blend of the two, we want to, it's so different and so unique that we try for a long time to find that one book, that one course, that one blueprint, that one strategy that's like, please, somebody tell me how to make this work, because I don't know, and I feel like I'm doing something so opposite of what everyone else says. And we interviewed a guy named Jay Akunzo who his whole thing is like, all that advice you hear that's, quote, common wisdom, maybe there's something to it that's not necessarily true to become the successful person, to become the entrepreneur person, the creator person. And so sometimes you have to listen to that nudge, even if it sounds so wrong and so different to what everybody else is saying, because it's like, again, the extra mile is never crowded. And that sounds really, really corny, but it's really true because everybody is following the common advice.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, literally one of the reasons that I find myself staying up all night working is because it's unconventional. Stay up all night working. So no one's emailing me about projects in the middle of the night. No one's distracting me. It's the most distraction-free time is when everyone's asleep. Yeah. So that's one of the reasons I love those crazy hours, is because I can just get in the zone and have no reason to exit. I can just work.
Yeah, that's awesome. So one of the things along the lines of people who are lifelong learners, as well as creators, and also creating your own tribe as a brand and as a consultant, how do you balance consuming content to learn versus creating content and building your own tribe? Do you have a balance of that, or do you spend a certain, percentage of time, constantly?
No, I'm not very good at that. I realized that my not being dependable as a contributor, as a tribe leader, that's a fault that causes problems. And I know that I would be able to, sell more, and I would be able to reach more people if I was if I were more routine. But ultimately, that's the effort that it takes me to pursue that, to have that routine, ends up taking away so much from my own creative process. And I think most people are different than me. I think most people end up getting a lot of value from the feedback that they get from people. They like to see it get into the world and inspire others. And I crave that feeling, but I don't ever really have that feeling. I'm a weird cookie where when I write a song, I'll write a song. Once I like it, I'm like, all right, it's made. I'm done. I don't care about sharing it. I don't care about doing anything with it.
That is
I literally create for the sake of creating. Like I said, because I can't not.
Yeah.
And that's usually where the process stops for me. I'd have several, oh man, I guess that's probably somewhere around 130,000 words of novel written on my hard drive that probably won't ever see the light of day, because I'm happy with where it was and moving on to the next thing. It's really more fuel for me to keep going. That's my fuel, is I'm happy with that, or happy enough with that to move on.
Yeah. I think that there are actually a lot of creatives who they, at the least, even if they might not have your sense of not caring if the world sees it, where their zone is and where they want to stay is in constantly creating something, and often creating something new, because what we know is creators, in the process of creating, so many more ideas come, and we want to get to them and to that and to the next thing. So, but as a marketer and a business owner, that in order to, put food on the table and pay the bills, you have to put your art into the world to be sold or purchased or, invested in as a service. So that does have to happen. What do you advise in that regard, based on your own experience of that conflict?
Understand where your weaknesses are and outsource. Find someone who help. That's Kourtney. That's my wife. She keeps it so I can actually make any sort of connection with the world.
Yeah.
If you see anything posted on like our Instagram or whatever, the only thing I had to do with that was like asking, hey, Kourtney, like months ago, years ago at this point, like, hey, can you help me like be a somewhat routine human being? And she ended up just taking that over entirely and just telling me like, hey, I need you to like give me some stuff sometimes. So I know that like my own operations and management is poor, but she is excellent at that. So
Yeah.
she does that on my behalf. And I'm fortunate that I have that. Not everyone has someone who they can just depend on to do that. And if you are without that, then you absolutely have to either learn how to do it better, which that is what I originally did. I was better at that when I had to. And then once you don't have to, it has to happen still.
Right.
Yeah.
But it has to happen.
Right. So that makes perfect sense. So
if you are a creative who right now you don't have the person who's like, hey, let me take this over, because you're obviously not being a human about it, and you can't just post to Instagram once a month and think that you have a solid business right now. So if you are that person who doesn't have that, then it's like you need to schedule in time once a day, once every couple days at the very least, whatever platform you're on, and spend that 5 minutes just posting a thing. Like, post a picture of something. It's not too hard to snap a photo of what you're doing, the process of what you're doing, put a quick little caption. It does not have to be this long, convoluted, deep thought thing. You can just be like, #working today, guys, and just a photo of your process. So you just have to work that into your schedule. And so,
yeah. So since you're running this business and with assistance, with a good compatible relationship. Now back to have somebody do it. Hopefully it's your partner, like John Lee Dumas and Kate Erickson. We interviewed Kate Erickson recently, and she does the systems, and John Lee Dumas of EO Fire, basically does the podcasts and the course creation and that sort of thing. Most of the courses, Kate has her own courses too. So it's very compatible and symbiotic. But if you don't have that person in your life yet, then one of the ways to do that is through outsourcing. So that's certainly that's Devani's business. She serves clients with social media, social marketing, and then she also has her own outsourcers who replace her on doing some of the things. And so then she can move up to the next level of consulting. So
then with our team, Leora is more like the better editor and content editor and creator on the public content side, or especially with like our 100-day challenge and doing the emails and the content for that. And I'm a little bit better at the technical systems, back-end stuff, or at least I have the help that I can be like, hey, I need help putting together this funnel or this email system. And so just having that. And I mean, I didn't really have a whole lot of outsourcers, and you didn't have a whole lot of outsourcers till this year.
Yeah.
And so there are times where you have to be the person who wears all the hats, and you just got to figure some of that out, like literally.
Like Matt was saying earlier, relative to just, figuring it out and doing it. And then you can also decide how much you want to work in that thing.
Mm-hmm.
But relative to the people who haven't yet, like a lot of our audience, they're either still working a job, trying to, consider leaving or making a living with their art, or they're struggling to make a living with their art. So what can you advise have been the one or two best things that you do to move your business forward? Like, what helps you to grow your business most, make it more prosperous?
Well, weirdly, it's a cliche thing. Like, you can't be afraid to fail. Like, you have to try new things. You have to experiment. If you're not trying new things, then you're probably not putting in the right amount of effort. Like, I've had a lot of success in meeting my goals and doing the things that I want to do, but I've failed at way more. Like, probably like 70% of the things that I've tried is a failure. And that's just part of it. You have to be able to be comfortable with that. Another thing that keeps me going is doing things being authentic is, another cliche thing, but super important, is the things that I try and do are authentic to what the goals are. So, you know, when I do wedding photography, I'm not trying to create this like package system that is just a reproducible model. What I try and do is actually understand what the bride wants and authentically care about each situation. Because you can smell that. You can just tell when someone is just putting you into a machine, or whether they're actually paying attention to you.
Yes. So, studio photography versus really artistic, the artisan kind of photography. Okay, that makes a lot of sense. But what about in terms of referrals and clients? Because you can do that once you have the client. But what helps you get the client the most? You know, how do you get most of your photography clients and cinematography clients?
I pretty much do it exclusively through content marketing. Not because that's wise, but because that's my nature. Because I'm going to make stuff, and not that content marketing is unwise. Exclusively content marketing is unwise. But I do that.
Yeah. So what kind of content? Articles, videos that you publish, and then where do you put them? Elaborate on that, please.
So a lot of different streams. Facebook is a big tool for me. I haven't used it a lot lately because I've been creating things. Well, I haven't used mine personally. I've been working a lot with a creative agency, so I've been posting on their page and whatnot and getting them business that comes through to me. But before that, I was just like, I mean, it wouldn't even matter what I did. When I would randomly play some cover of a song on an acoustic guitar, then I'm booking photography gigs, like, because it brings people in front of mind, it brings people to his attention. It's like, oh, that's like a creative guy. He does stuff. I remember he does things, and I'm looking for the thing. So that's what worked for me. You know, like I've said before, I don't necessarily think that I have any sort of wisdom that is applicable to everyone by any means.
No, yeah.
You know, I know what works for me.
Yeah, well, no, I mean, but what works for you could definitely help other people with ideas, especially those who are just getting started. Yeah, and
especially those who maybe feel uncomfortable with their technical know-how on the marketing or business side, where it's just like, okay, well, I can wrap my head around posting a video about something creative I do, or I can wrap my head around publishing a piece of content around who I am and what I do. And that's like one simple step.
Yeah, well, so go ahead.
And I think it comes to that knowing yourself thing, because a lot of people have a lot of success with like networking events and stuff like that. Mm-hmm. I'm terrible at that. I'm going to be the weird guy in the corner of the room, like on my phone or like thinking of some other thing. Yeah. So I know that it's useful and it should be something that I do, but I know myself and I know that that's not my path.
Yeah. Well, and it's back to the should. You know, we shouldn't get should upon because, you know, you should do you. You know, you should do you. And you know, that's the best way out altogether. So if I could come back to understanding a little bit your content creation. So you create a video of your music, maybe with some of your photos, and you put it on YouTube, or you do it Facebook Live. What is your primary thing lately?
Primary isn't a thing that exists in my life.
Okay.
I had the opportunity to go to Bogota recently, and Colombia, and I took a bunch of photos and some video there, and I just like randomly shared some of those photos throughout like the following weeks, because I had them and I was editing them and I was working on them. So I was just sharing some of the things that I was doing, and I was just posting it. Most of the time was posting it to my personal Facebook page, because it was a fit with like the branding at some points of the video stuff, but at some points I've been trying to position it more towards like weddings and it's not necessarily a similar, like, you know, a bride isn't going to look at like an impoverished Colombian child and necessarily see like, oh, that's what I want to look like.
Right.
So I try and use a little bit of discernment there, and like maybe that's not the avenue to share this, but at the same time, like this cool landscapey one might be a little bit more appropriate. So, you know, use a little bit of discernment as far as what messaging you're sending out. But for the most part, I've always really had the most success with people knowing me as an individual more so than my businesses, but that's mostly because of inconsistency of like of posting and sharing and all that. But as an individual, I'm pretty prolific and I'm constantly putting stuff out. Yeah. So that tends to be my best avenue.
Yeah, very cool. That makes sense. So,
it's really about showing up, right? You know, once you've created the thing, and whether you're And a lot of people, I think today, with today's world, people want to know like the story behind the creator, because we live in a very unique time where you can sort of be alive while you're becoming your own legend, kind of, you know what I mean? Like, you know, these people like Da Vinci and Michelangelo, like they didn't become like super, 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 super famous until after their time, whereas we're living in a unique time where you can create your own quote fame around who you are, and people want to know like, well, who is that? And
you can go viral and connect with the world in like an instant.
Right.
Da Vinci didn't have that opportunity.
Right.
But you can't do that if you don't show up and put the thing out there
and create it. And there is a lot of value in consistency. One of we enjoy following Gary Vaynerchuk, and he speaks a lot to the consistency of constantly producing content and putting it out there, and also something you've mentioned a couple times, and that is the incredible power of self-awareness. So knowing oneself, being very self-aware, which you, as you've described, you are, makes, you know, then that's when we can become successful anyway, without having to follow the herd in the traditional way of doing things. We do us, we do what works for us.
And partnering with people who, eventually as you can, partnering with people who can fill in your gaps, because a lot of us creatives, we shy away from the nitty-gritty business stuff that we have to do.
Yeah, so then we can outsource that. So since you have all this self-awareness and you kind of wrestled your way into listening more and more to your voice and not, you know, the mainstream, what you should do kind of thing, are there any areas that you struggle with that you would like to change or improve?
Oh yeah. Well, one, it's a double-edged sword, because like being like aware of my nature also makes you complacent with your nature, makes you like tempted to not stretch yourself in ways, like not tempted, like I just don't in a lot of ways. Yeah. I just decide, get a little stubborn and dig my heels in, like, oh no, this is how I do it though. Yeah. And that's naive, especially for someone who likes to like develop and grow as much as I do. So, you know, I'm always combating that, finding that balance between like doing what is me, but also like growing me.
Yeah.
Probably the biggest thing that I struggle with, and why I don't share as anywhere near as much as I should, is I get real uninspired creating things that I feel like I've already seen before. Like I get real, I don't know, bored with mundane, or like if it's been out like once, if I saw it somewhere once, then I'm like, I don't want to do that. That's already been done. I'm kind of like an annoying hipster that way, I guess.
Yeah. Well, there are, you know, so along those lines, one thing that can help, it amazes me in particular with photographers, one of the gifts I think that photographers and videographers have is an ability to see what other people may not see, and an ability to have the lens capture the view that most people would never know and miss. And so it's sort of like, you know, even if it's a mundane thing, that might be a way to sort of like, what's behind the scenes of that image? You know, is there what's deeper? Okay, there's the tree, but what does that bark look like close up? You know, and what is it if you zoom in on it further? What does it look like with a different color thing? Or what does it look like with an inchworm? You know, I mean, like, there's a lot of different ways to take that, you know, as well, that learner mindset into the mundane and make it not mundane anymore.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm. Well, and I go to the other extreme too, where I end up trying so hard to make something unique that I just don't ever make the thing, because I'm trying to make it like this groundbreaking thing that's never been made, and that's just unrealistic to do that with any sort of frequency. I mean, that's the thing that someone will like, that'll change their life. If you can actually do that, that'll change your life. Yeah. And to expect to do that every day of the week is completely unrealistic. Sometimes you got to understand the song has already been sung, and you're just doing it through your perspective, which is in and of itself unique. It will always be unique because no one has ever been you before. And
that's right. And you made,
but so real.
Yeah. And the song has been sung, but not by you until you do it. So, yeah.
I've always thought it was like there's taking the photo, and then there's capturing the story, and you're always going to kind of waffle between the two, because you'll look through your photos and you'll be like, that's just a photo. That's just, you know, that's just whatever photo. And then you'll look at that one photo out of the hundreds you take, and you're like, there's the story, you know, that one shot that happened. But you don't get there necessarily by always obsessing over, do I click the do I click the button now? Like, do I click the button now? Like, sometimes you just have to take the picture and constantly take that picture. And then eventually you're like, wow, I have a story here that people will be interested in.
Yeah. So,
well, especially when it's people, when it's people, I'm taking a photo that I've seen 100 times, but they've never been in that photo before. They've never seen themselves that way before, and they love it. And especially when you're serving a client, like you've got to really suspend your own stinginess and understand that they want something cool too.
Exactly. That's perfect. So do you like to read? And are there any books that you're reading now or that have moved you as a creator that you'd like to share?
I don't read a ton. I don't consume much, honestly. That's another one of those things that I combat. Like the common wisdom is you should consume. Like a great writer is always well read. And but I don't listen to radio much. I don't really watch TV much. I don't listen to music in general much. It's bizarre. I end up I'm excitable. And I get inspired really quickly. So I will literally open up the last several times I've tried reading a novel just for leisure to relax. I get chapter in and then I'm like, oh man, I want to tell my story now. You know, like I said, I'm that perpetual let me try. Yeah. And same thing with music. I start listening to an album, I get halfway through before I pick up my guitar and start playing something. Yeah. So it's a bizarre thing where I'm just almost incapable of consuming.
Yeah. No, it makes perfect. That's the creator mindset. So it makes perfect sense.
So you like tidbits of inspiration and then it's my turn.
Yeah. Yeah.
That said, one of the books that I couldn't put down is the War of Art. It's, play on which I think we've talked about that before, the Stephen Pressfield. Yes. That's one of those that so many of those things that, are really true for me now and keep me going, because one of the most important lessons that I learned from that book is that you're doing a disservice if you feel like you should create something and you're not. You're doing a disservice to humanity. Yeah. You really should do it, because that means so much to so many people. And most importantly, it means a lot to yourself. To function as a human, if you have that strong desire to create and you just feel like there isn't necessarily anyone out there who wants to consume it. Yeah. It's important for you to make it. Yeah. It's more than just someone receiving it.
Definitely. And to push against that resistance that you spoke about earlier, which Stephen Pressfield speaks about so well and reminds us of so well. So do you have before we go, do you have any parting piece of advice for creatives who are just getting started or who are working hard in the trenches right now?
I mean, I think for me, the big resounding thing is understanding yourself. That's what we've gone back to quite a few times, and just doing your own version of creating, just being unique until it's excellent.
Yeah. You. Awesome. So people can see your website at tandemstudios.co. Is there any other links that you want to share with people or ways to connect with you?
I do a lot of work through Anderson Creative. AndersonCreative.works is a creative agency that I work with a lot, and pretty much if you see photos and videos on there, I did it.
Okay, cool.
So that's a great place you can keep up with me too.
AndersonCreative.work or .work? .works. Okay. Works. All right. Awesome. We will include that. Well, thank you so much, Matt. It was great spending a little bit of time with you today.
Yeah, I appreciate you having me.
Okay. All right. Talk to you soon. Thanks so much for joining us for the I Create Daily podcast. Please let us know what creatives you would like us to interview and what topics you would be interested in hearing more about.
And if you enjoyed this show, please leave a review on iTunes. We value your feedback. We read all the reviews, and it just helps us get the word out on the I Create Daily podcast. Thank you so much.
Thanks so much.